Welcome to another episode of From Startup to Wunderbrand with Nicholas Kuhne. Howdy everyone. We've got Darren Saul. Darren is a serial podcaster, strategist, trainer, coach, keynote speaker, and student of human attention. He's now a podcast junkie who consults with organizations to help them get serious business results by integrating podcasting into their marketing strategy. Darren, great to have you on board. How are you doing?
Thank you so much for joining me. I love the intro. I love the style of the show, and I'm looking forward to having a chat.
Well, Darren, you practice what you preach, and you'll go into a little bit about your background, but you didn't start out in podcasting, did you? Maybe take us through a bit of your journey and how you became a podcast junkie.
Yes, with pleasure. I've done lots of things, but probably about 25 years ago, I started working as an IT recruiter. And I'm still working as an IT recruiter to this day. I love recruiting. And probably about 10 years ago, I rekindled my passion for photography, which I did at school. I do that part-time on the weekends, and I do headshots, small family events, sometimes corporate events.
Candid photos, he asked him knowingly. Nudge, no.
Yes, anyway. I love candid. That's my favorite.
So it's a Monty Python reference to those of you who think I'm being filthy.
About 6-7 years ago, I started exploring other ways to market both businesses, because the traditional marketing methods of phone calls, letter drops, and Google SEO and whatever wasn't really giving me the results I needed. So I stumbled into podcasting as a new way of marketing, building content and a marketing system. I have enjoyed it so much and got incredible results from it that I decided to now teach other people to go on that same journey. And I think it's just a fantastic way to do two things: to build incredible brand awareness and trust, but also to generate marketing content, which is what we need today.
Well, I think you have some great conversations with really random people. So, I mean, unless people can't tell, Darren is not from around these here. You're from Oz, and I'm obviously originally from South Africa. So, that's the great thing about podcasts. It brings us together. When you first started out podcasting, there must have been 5 podcasts. So getting in there must have been easier than now with millions of podcasts. Yes. But starting out podcasting in those early days compared to now, what are some of the challenges that folks are going to come across that you didn't have to necessarily deal with? What are some of the amazing new things that are out there for potential podcasters that would help them start their podcast career?
Yeah, great. 2 great questions. When I started, it was a little less saturated than it is today. And the other thing is that even though there's a podcast every minute or two, a new podcast, it's actually rare for people to go past episode 20. People get excited about podcasting and they jump on the bandwagon. I think it's going to change the world and whatever else. And then after 10 or 20 episodes, they give up because it takes a lot of work, as you know. So even though it's incredibly saturated, not that many people go the distance. And the other thing, because of that, you have to try and be a little bit better in your total process. Your preparation has to be a little bit better than just jumping on the phone, on the microphone. Your background might need a bit more attention, like mine today needs a bit of attention. You need to be a little bit better in your graphics, in your copy. You have to tighten up things a little bit more than you had to do years ago, because the saturation has forced us to be a little bit better than our competition. So that's number one. But on the flip side, as you just mentioned, there are now an incredible amount of tools that are AI driven that can help us do a lot of this stuff without all the man hours. So I started to heavily use all these great tools for developing captions on my videos, for developing show notes using AI, to doing some video editing and audio editing. I can name a couple of them. Like you mentioned, you use one of them called Descript. There's another one called Decipher. There's a great tool called Swell AI, which does all your captions and timestamps. There's ChatGPT. And then, of course, you've got video tools like Opus Pro, Splashio, and I could name hundreds of them, but there's so many great tools out there and even Riverside, we're using Riverside right now. Riverside has also built in a lot of these tools into the back end, so your workflow is easier. So all these things are helping podcasters spend a little less time doing all the bulk work. And the other great thing that you can do, which I've started doing recently as well, is to start using some freelancers overseas to help you with your podcast editing. They're fantastic. I've got some girls from the Philippines that are trained podcast engineers, and they make my stuff sound better than me. And they do a great job of leveling things up properly and cleaning up any distortion and noise. So there's two sides to the coin. Yes, you have to be a bit better and you have to treat it seriously, but there's some tools to help you. And the one thing that I just mentioned is that when I say you have to treat it seriously, you have to really think about this as a system. The podcast is your marketing system. It's going to generate long form content that you're going to then strip up into little bits and use in the rest of your marketing journey and all your platforms. But it's got to be consistent. You've got to be patient. You've got to treat it with respect and do a good job, and the results will come if you do that.
Well, you picked up quite a few nice points there. I think the system is one of the most important things. I've done about 80 interviews now. I've got about 15, maybe a few more episodes that I'm in the process of editing. I've done 3 today, so that's why I look like I look today. But yeah, that system is very important. I spoke to Alex Sanfilippo, who's the founder of Podmatch, which is where we both met. They've brought in new systems. They're constantly adding new bits and pieces, and it makes life so much easier. Only problem is that there are now guests from outside of Podmatch that don't go into Podmatch, and that causes now you've got to have 2 systems. So there's always systems and spreadsheets that you need to be on top of. I got to about 40 and I was like, oh man, this is hard work, not getting the numbers I want. You've just got to push through because, as they say, and I use this probably too often in this podcast, but I'll hopefully be an overnight success once I've done 1,000 episodes.
They say when you get to episode 100, things start to build a bit of traction. You start to build a bit of critical mass. And I would say that's true.
And I think the key thing is when you're starting out on a podcast, a lot of folks start out with an idea and then they run out of ideas, run out of guests and things like that. How have you, maybe you can tell us how many podcasts you've done, but how do you manage keeping your energy up? How did you get over that hump?
Yeah, good question. So I've got 2 podcasts, one for my recruitment business and one for my photography and podcasting business. In the latter, I'm up to episode 228 or 229, but on the recruitment business, I've done 60 or 70 episodes. So probably just over 300 in total. But number one, I systemize it and I use Calendly. I have little notepad with a framework for my episodes when I draft them. I try and even manually automate as best I can so I don't have to recreate the wheel and things are done really quickly. I send out a 1-page document, or I've turned it into a website, to all my guests to say, this is what I need for the show. I get them to help me. Put in your bio. Think of a fun title, and I'll tweak it if I have to. I'll get them to do some of the grunt work for me. Come up with a few questions or a couple of topic points. Send me a photo. Send me a logo. Get all the stuff that I don't have to chase. And all goes into one place, and I just pick it up. So I try and streamline that as best I can. And then you have to love it as well. Like if you don't love it and you don't enjoy talking to people, you don't enjoy playing around with some of the technology, you're not going to continue. And I'm just going to give myself a shameless plug because it might help some people, is that I've just actually done a recorded webinar on how to monetize your podcast. And I go through 15 ways to start monetizing your podcast, even from the beginning. So you don't have to wait to episode 100. It's really cheap. At this point, it's like $20. If anybody's interested, jump on my website. You can have it. It could give you ideas to start bringing in a little bit of revenue or partnering with people for sponsorship. It doesn't feel like this drain where you're not getting anything back. It's about the system, the passion, and trying to get the guests to do a bit of work for you so you don't have to do all this work up front.
Yeah. I think a lot of folks especially guests, haven't had media training in terms of how to respond to questions and how to flow with and ask questions back.
Yeah.
Giving them that guidance is useful. I just want to touch on one more point in terms of getting over the hump. I've had it myself when I started out with what I thought I wanted to talk about. You can either go really into detail in one subject, but then you kind of run out of steam after a few episodes. So it sort of expanded a little bit. But now I'm going to be doing a series on BRICS brands. BRICS is Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa and other countries that have joined up. Since I'm a branding guy, I'm going to be talking about brands. So we're going to reach out to all the government departments that are, helping us trade in industry and interview them. I've got a couple of folks signed up already for that. That's one avenue in branding that I'm pursuing. It came to me and I was like, this is great. This will be a series I can do on this. So I think it helps if once you've done quite a few episodes, you kind of see where you should be going. So I don't think people should be disheartened when they start out that they have no idea what they're doing or that they're running out of content.
That's right. And actually, I'll come back to a point that you asked earlier as well, is how do we find guests? There's so many great ways to find guests. First of all, look around you. Who do you work with? Who do you connect with? Who do you collaborate with from a work point of view? Family and friends. Join a networking group. There'll be hundreds of guests dying to come on your podcast. Use social media. Use your newsletters. Just talk about your podcast. Before you know it, you'll have guests lined up for the next 10 or 20 episodes. Because at the moment, everybody is dying for attention, getting opportunities, and everybody wants to get on everybody's podcasts. So it's just about getting the message out there that you have one, and you will have a list of people flocking towards coming on your show. The other great thing you're doing is starting to create sub-content within your content. You could have a great playlist on your YouTube channel for BRICS, and then you could have all those different sub-topics within your larger podcast. People can do that. There's no rules. You don't have to keep it narrow. You can do variety. And it's more about how you catalog it and how you frame it and present it than what you're doing, because attention is so slim. Not everybody's going to even see three-quarters of the stuff you're doing. It's about how you position it to your audience that makes sense to them. You can chop and change tack, but at the end of the day, once you've got the content, how do you catalog it and how do you present it so it makes logical sense? That's the key.
Well, I guess this is why it's important for folks to speak to podcasting specialists like yourself, because no one podcast is the same as another.
No.
I was dealing with some students in Norway who just started. One was on being able to sleep better, and they already got sponsorship from day one. And I thought, who would think about that? Yep. So in terms of all the aspects of social media, setting up the YouTube page, all of these little things that have taken me months to figure out, people can shortcut that by going to your website. Another shameless plug here. And I saw you've got a whole bunch of awesome courses that folks can take. So maybe take us through some of the courses and why you created those courses and who they'd be useful for.
So I've created different options for people because some don't want to spend big money. Some want to do a one-on-one training session or course with me over a few sessions. That's a little more expensive. Then I've got a video course that's pretty much the same thing, but record it and you can just download it. Much, much less investment. I've got how to make money from your podcast and a webinar I just did. You can jump on for an hour or so and have a chat, a strategy session. And then I also started thinking about how do I help podcast guests? Because not everybody wants to set up a podcast and do the work, but they all want to get on podcasts and leverage that opportunity. I also noticed that a lot of people were coming on my show and not doing anything with the content. So I thought there's an opportunity here to help guests leverage what they're doing. So I created a little course for guests for how to actually execute better, how to show up, how to get your message right, and how to use the content to your advantage rather than just letting it disappear into the ether. Loads of different places for people to have a look. You can always just give me a buzz, have a chat, send me a message. Always happy to answer any questions.
I love that you spoke about giving guests some support, because to your point, I've had over 60 interviews and hardly any of them have done anything with the content. I create shorts, I go put things onto Twitter, TikTok, variety of channels, and only one or two good ones have actually shared or repurposed it. And I'm like, what is the point of doing this if you're not going to, are you watching it for your own gratification? So I definitely think that's an area that people need a little bit of help with and a bit of coaching on how to be a guest. So I'm giving you some good business advice here. Give them a checklist of what to do, what to ask a guest. Maybe they're shy for asking for content, or can they share it? And just simple things like I asked you in the beginning of the show, to like and subscribe and follow my social channels so that you can see when I'm posting content about you.
Absolutely, 100%. And even in your initial messaging and framework when you're setting up the podcast, put all that in there. I would like you to give me a bio. I would like you to give me your photo. I would like you to connect with this, this, and this, because it's going to help me market you for the show. So you get them to jump through all these hoops before they even start, so the work is done for you. And then you might even have a follow-up and say, I'm going to give you all this footage. Here's a little snippet video. Please post it up on social media regularly. Please put it up on all your channels. Please tag me in. You've got to teach people how to actually promote themselves and promote you at the same time. Podcast is a collaboration. If we're not going to do anything with this stuff, what's the point? It's great. It's absolutely ridiculous. It's ludicrous to do all this work, put in your heart, effort, and not do anything with it. It's a waste of opportunity.
Exactly. Now, you spoke about you've just got a webinar on how to monetize your podcast. So not to give away the whole farm, but maybe give us a couple of juicy sweeteners so that we can get folks to download that. And also, I might steal one or two of those.
Yeah, you can have it all. I come up with 15 different ways to monetize. I'll run through a few of them. First of all, like, you don't have to always think about sponsorship as a little ad in the middle of your podcast, and you don't have to wait for 1,000 downloads or 1,000 subscribers for someone to find that of value. If you're starting a podcast in a particular area, you can approach someone, like you mentioned, the sleep company in Oslo. They might have approached a place that does masks or a place that does research and say, look, you know what, I'm putting this podcast together. How can we collaborate? How can we put something together that's going to help both of us? Maybe you want to come on my show once a month and you want me to just put some visual merchandise in the background that's going to help people brand you. Do you want to help me just say this is sponsored by this company? Like, you can come up with all these creative ways not to have a direct ad, but just have some kind of a collaboration and get some revenue in return. It might be revenue. It might be, you might even be able to draw on some of their resources. Maybe they have a team of podcast editors that can do this stuff for you. Think outside the box. It doesn't have to be just in terms of an ad spot. It's a partnership of some kind. As I mentioned, merchandise. A lot of people are having visual merchandise. So you might have a little brand or logo or a picture of a drink bottle with a logo, or your microphone, something you're starting to brand visually. And you might not even talk about it, but a hat with a certain brand on it, or a t-shirt. It's kind of reinforcing this visual merchandise brand into the audience's minds every time they see your show. So that's another way to do it. The other great thing to do is using some premium content. Let's say you're in branding and you have loads of documentation, book lists, checklists, and pointers about branding, and you might have written a book. You might say, look, I'm giving you all this stuff for free on the podcast. I've got loads of extra premium content. Sign up to my membership, and I'm going to give you all that stuff as well. There's just 3 ideas, but there's so many more. Well, I'll mention one more, what you're about to do with bricks. You might establish great relationships with some of those departments on your podcast and think of that in terms of business development and prospect. They might become some branding clients for you at some point. It's about thinking about how we can get a return on investment of all the stuff that we're doing, and think creatively rather than in the traditional ad spot. I'll pay you so much for putting my ad in the middle of your show, which I don't love because it's a disjointed interruption as well.
Yeah, and I love your point about the podcast is the gateway basically to new business. So you're not going to generally make money off your podcast, but it to be those introductions, it to be meeting new people, to be bringing people onto the show. And hey, who knows, after a certain amount of episodes, you might have one of your potential clients listening to it and thinking, hey, this is the right person for me.
Yep.
So some super strong ideas there. When we go into promotion, one of the challenges is that there are so many channels that you can put your content onto. I mentioned TikTok, Instagram, X, YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and
Stitcher,
iHeartRadio.
iHeart. Oh, it goes on forever.
Yeah, there's millions, plus your own website where you should be putting your content on. How do you go about explaining to people which is the right channel for them to use and which one should they focus on? Because we have finite amount of time in a day. So what is your suggestion to folks starting out?
I'll give everybody 5 or 6 main platforms or places to think about. Go for the big ones first. From a video point of view, YouTube has got to be the one to go with. Don't use anything else. YouTube is the second biggest search engine. Use YouTube for your video. From an audio point of view, go with Apple and Spotify. Those are the 2 big ones. If you use an app like Spotify for podcasters, you can distribute it out to some of the others. Use LinkedIn and Facebook. They're possibly, depending on your market, you might want to use TikTok. You pick your social media channels that work to your audience. And don't exclude a newsletter or an email campaign. Social media is getting noisy and saturated. We're almost having to go back to traditional methods of sending people emails, but they've got to be done in a quality way. It's not just going to be some rubbish that you said because people are going to get rid of it. If you do it nicely and don't make it too disruptive and not too much stuff in one email, you might start building a little campaign, an email campaign or a newsletter campaign, and throwing your messages or your new episodes or whatever else that you're doing to your audience that way. So you've got to tackle a few different things there. And once you've done that, then you can start generating and start doing things a little outside the box. I've started using Eventbrite as a marketing platform. Got some great traction from people searching for podcasting stuff on Eventbrite, but whatever is your market, you might use that. But again, you've only got a certain amount of time, stick to the basics. And then as you tighten those up, you can start adding others, or you can get help for people that do that stuff.
I think the key point there is there's no one size fits all for podcasters, and that Eventbrite idea is good. I mean, I'm on Reddit. It's a bit of a pain, but there are so many platforms out there. Folks need to focus on 1 or 2 of their channels and experiment to see where are you getting traction. I'm actually getting traction, quite a lot of traction on Pinterest, for example, because Pinterest is the largest visual image search library in the world. And if you put your podcast there or little clips there, they've now got video. And another piece of advice that might help folks is that people expect 1,000 views, 1,000,000 views overnight. That can be quite disheartening when you're not getting numbers that you see everyone else getting. But I heard a very good strategy in one of the last interviews I did, which is where you just want to improve your efficiency on all of these channels, whether it's getting guests, likes, views, etc., by 1% a week. Not 100%, not 5,000%, 1% a week. And that 1%, when compounded over the year, is just tremendous. So it's about taking those little steps, and it'll snowball from there. If you have the system, as you mentioned, so you just keep consistent, you help your guests, you make sure that people who are sponsors in that are getting value from what you're doing, it grows from there. It takes time. Not many of us are like the girl touring the world and doing cool interviews. The rest of us have to slog away. If you do that 1% a week, you'll see tremendous results in 6 months to a year.
It's those incremental steps that we put into place every day just to tighten up a little bit. They compound dramatically when you add them together later on, for sure.
Darren, what is the worst podcast experience you've had?
God, I think worst podcast experience. Honestly, I haven't had a terrible podcast experience, but if I summarize all of them and take what's good and what's bad, it's really just people that might not have prepared enough to come on the show. When you don't prepare, you start talking fast, going off on tangents, and the whole episode can become a bit of a train wreck. The key is to do a little bit of preparation have a little framework in your mind as to what you want to talk about and what messages you want to portray. Then work with the guests and follow the guest lead, the host's lead, to just execute in a nice, controlled, relevant, logical fashion. Otherwise, the whole thing can become a bit of a mess, and that's not going to really help anyone. So it's really just preparation is such a big thing to podcasting.
Make sure your microphone works. Make sure there's not a construction site.
That's right. Yeah.
Next door.
Absolutely.
I interview a lot of folks who've written books in my field, so marketing, AI, branding, etc. It sounds like you are inching towards putting together a book here because you've got all your chapters. I think next time we chat, I'd like to promote your book and talk about podcasting from down under. Where can I send folks to find all of these goodies that you've mentioned? And are there any special offers for our listeners?
Well, you can jump on my website, which is just suspendedanimation.com.au. Click the podcasting tab and it'll take you to everything. But I'll give you a little one tiny URL link I've created as a landing page to all the cool offers. There's lots of free stuff to download, free ebooks, free booklets, free guest guides, free podcast guides. And then there's a couple of the paid courses and other things. So you can have it all in one place. I'm doing some deals at the moment where some of them are really cheap. And so you can jump on and take whatever you like. There's lots of free stuff where you can learn a lot. Highly recommend you jumping in and learning whatever you can.
Well, we all love free stuff, so I'm definitely going to send folks over to that. And obviously, once they've sampled some of your free stuff, hopefully they become paying customers and get onto your mailing list. So that's how we do it, is get that incremental growth. Darren, it's been fantastic having you on the call. It's some really good insights and a couple of really good pointers for folks. It's not brain surgery running a podcast. It's systems. It's just sticking to it and making sure you get that incremental growth. So thank you so much for your time. And we'll send folks over to your website to start their podcast journey or to improve their current podcast.
Awesome. I really appreciate being on the show. It's been a great interview. And I just want to say happy podcasting to everybody out there.